Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GlobalLogic Cafe, LinkedIn Live Conversations. Our conversations via the LinkedIn Live Cafe are all around technology, careers, leadership, and diversity. Our host for today's chat is Ramki Krishna, Senior Vice President and Head of Automotive at GlobalLogic. Let's welcome Ramki with a huge round of applause.
Hey, thank you, Pratibha, and for the applause. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the GL Cafe session on LinkedIn Live. As Pratibha mentioned, I run the automotive and industrial business for GlobalLogic. I'm based in Dallas. I run it globally, and talking to several industry leaders, there are three big disruptions that are happening in the automotive industry today, right? Electric vehicles. There is a huge surge in the demand as well as the adoption of electric vehicles. B, autonomous, as the vehicles are moving more towards autopilot and autonomous mode. Three, it is a software-defined vehicles. All these three topics are very close to my heart. As I'm looking to buy a car, when I go out and look for different cars, these are the three things on top of my mind in terms of what I want to see in a car. So while these discussions are very important, each one of these topics are very deep, and we can spend a day in each one of these topics. But today, for the conversation, I thought it would be great to have a deep dive into electric vehicles, and more importantly, ICE internal combustion engines versus electric vehicles. So we have an esteemed speaker here, Manoj Kumar. He's the Senior General Manager, Sales and Marketing for Astemo, Hitachi Astemo. He's responsible for the Powertrain and the Safety Systems business unit, which encompasses of ICE, ADAS, and electric vehicles. Manoj is a 25-year-old veteran in the industry. He joined Hitachi Astemo about in 2012. That was his first employer, for India. And he spent considerable amount of time in Japan and played a major role in formulating the product and the customer strategies for the India market. Manoj also had worked very closely with the OEMs in India, and I've also closely worked with automotive customers in the Asian and South American, North American regions. Prior to Hitachi, he had worked with Delphi, he had worked with Henkel and few other companies. So we are lucky to have him, and a person with such credentials, and really looking forward to this conversation. Manoj, welcome.
Thank you, Ramki. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So Manoj, great to have you here. Let's get started right away, right? I want to start the discussion with a market perspective, right? If you look at electric vehicle sales today, around 6.5 million of EVs were sold in 2021, and we have seen a huge increase, around about 70-75% year on year. And if I need to categorize this volume of business into three broad geographies, right? It is USA, Europe, and China. Interestingly, China has 50% of the market share, followed by Europe, and US is a distant third. India and some of the other markets doesn't even appear in the global map today. So US spends significant amount of time in the Indian market talking to the various OEMs. So we want to get your perspective about the overall market in India with respect to electric vehicles. Where do you see that shaping? And with respect to the ICE engine, where is it today?
Yeah, thank you, Ramki. I think you set a right point on the table. So basically, as you said, the electric vehicle segment is catching up the speed everywhere in the world. There is many reasons to that, but primarily, it is the carbon emission controls which we need to get into the regulations, etc., is making many governments to ensure that the dependency on the fossil fuel need to be controlled. That is one of the primary reasons. So, as you said, this trend started probably almost many years before in the other markets like US, Europe, or in China, for instance. But in India, what we are seeing now is a increased trend and pressure on market as well as the producers for moving into EV segment. The one reason for that is obviously the reduce the emissions and also the reduce the dependency on the fossil fuel. These are basically the reasons. So where we are standing in India, or to answer your question about that, why India is not visible in the global spectrum is basically the reason is that we just started it while others are already moved ahead of us. And the natural progression from ICE engines to EV is not just ICE to EV, but basically it happens from ICE to hybrid vehicles to electrification. This is what every market. If you take for instance, one of the largest the market for hybrid and electric vehicles in the world is Japan, and there it is this natural progression happened is from ICE to hybrid to electrification. In our case, what we are actually planning to do is, or what we want to do is a jump from ICE engines to electric vehicles. So it is having a mixed effect in the market. For instance, if you take the manufacturers, the ecosystem required for a 100% electrification is totally different. We need charging stations. First of all, we need the electric power, and we need the charging stations. And also we need the suppliers, which is locally available. So one of the main reason is if you look at the battery, which is the power source for any electric vehicles, and associated electronics, which we are still depending on other markets. So this basically making the EV, economics of EV in India is a big challenge. So we are still depending on the imported parts. And we have a concern about the global OEMs, which is operating in India, is bringing over the technologies. They are just watching because there are uncertainties in the volume of what we are going to get, etc. This is giving EV a kind of people are just following wait and watch. In the meantime, what is happening with the ICE engines are that most of the car makers in India have a sufficiently high capacities of internal combustion engines for the production. So what they're going to do with the capacities if a sudden electrification is happening, and which is very unlikely. So what, from the Hitachi Astemo's point of view, what we are perceiving is that the ICE engines likely to continue for a significant amount of time in India, but in parallel, there could be a serious growth of electrification, which is already what we are seeing, not in passenger cars, but we are seeing it in other segments. But we have to go long way to get into the global map. If you compare it with the North American markets or the European markets or Asia, specifically Japan or China, we have a long way to go. So in summary, we are in a very nascent stage and just started into this particular stream of automobiles, and it will take some more time for us to reach that level.
Oh, thank you. So thanks for setting the context, Manoj, right? I think you talked about a bunch of things. You talked about the infrastructure, both the charging as well as reliable power. You talked about the investments that the OEMs have made in ICE engines, which is the fixed capacity that they have. And you also talked about the price, right? Price of EV vehicles. Let's kind of try and talk about each one of those in a little more detail, and probably we'll get more insights. Talking about the price, today in China, what I read was that the difference, the gap between the conventional cars and the electric vehicles is about 10-15%. And this, again, China is the only country that has been able to achieve this compared to other nations, where the gap is much more. And that is also driving the sales. Of course, there are other aspects, as you said, with respect to infrastructure and other things. So what do you think that China is probably doing right in trying to bring the gap down between the EV and the ICE engines?
So, sorry, the main differentiator is the high level of localization. For instance, if you see the main cost of electric vehicles comes from the component goes into that. So compared to the ICE engines, the number of parts required for an electric car or for its drivetrain, for instance, it is very less. For instance, if you take an internal combustion engine, you are talking about maybe 1,000 parts or high upwards. But in the case of a electrified vehicle, you need a motor and drive system and a battery control. So I am talking about the powertrain side. So these parts at the moment, it all need to be imported in India. There is a very little localized production available for these parts in India. So this is the one area where we are, the Indian government is through its Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are promoting more and more localization here. But again, the question comes, if someone want to commit the high level of or local production, for instance, of motor, and we need to see the visibility of what should be the volume. Otherwise, the investment for that cannot be justified. So in China, if you see that most of these components, right from the semiconductors to the motors or the controlling system, most of the parts are localized. I'm not saying that there are areas where some of them are brought from outside, but to the great extent, the industry depends on localized components. This is one of the key differentiators. In India, what is actually when we import a motor from other country, for instance, from Japan or from Europe or from North America, we pay very high percentage of import duty. Basically, the government is encouraging to localize it. But again, the question comes on what volume. So that is the trick of the trade here. But in the case of China, they have a localized components which drive down the cost of the manufacturing or the cost of the end product significantly lower. That is the reason for, I think you made a very right number, 15% price difference between an internal combustion engine powered car versus electric vehicle. And this 15% gap is obviously due to the high level of local content. But in India, if you look at an electric car, most of the parts are imported. So that is why the price goes up.
So thank you. That makes sense. If you really look at Tesla, right? Tesla wanted to enter India, but I think the government was very clear that they have to have a local assembly as well as manufacturing line. And that is one of the reasons probably Tesla didn't want to take a plunge in India. But I think more importantly, one is the price, of course, but the biggest worry for electric, right? Talking to people is the charging points, right? The charging infrastructure. And India is very unique because of the reliability of power as well. So what do you think are the steps taken by the government, both from an infrastructure side as well as from the reliability of power?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ramki. I think most of the people who we meet ask this question, okay, how we are going to power it up? Okay, we achieve everything, but how it is going to run, right? That's a good question. So looking at that, you made a very right point that one of our main challenges availability of electricity in right quality. When I say right quality, in right voltage or in right frequency or in uninterrupted supply, that is one of the challenge we are. But we came a long way, and now the many states in India is achieved the sufficiency of power, at least not surplus, but there are surplus states as well. But what actually government is doing is that the individual states, for example, several states in India is driving the recharging infrastructure. I can name for instance, if you take Andhra Pradesh or Telangana state, or if you look at the state of Tamil Nadu, or you look at the Kerala, or if you look at the state of Delhi and Gujarat, so many states, Maharashtra for that. So many states are offering, the free charging stations, and National Highways Authority of India also proposing charging stations at limited intervals when you drive through the national highway in India. But looking at the size of our country, and our country, most most of our country lives in the rural area. So if you move inwards into the countryside, the question comes, how we are going to achieve the charging. For instance, you take an electric car and drive towards a countryside from a metropolitan city. The moment you leave maybe a 200 kilometer from the city, it will be difficult for you to even see the petrol or diesel station. So in that case, the concern is this is called the range anxiety in the case of EV parlance. So the owner or the driver of the car suddenly become anxious. Okay, if suddenly I run out of my battery, what is going to do? This is one of the big concern for the many of the people. To remove this, the government is offering many things. Like if you drive along national highways, in coming future, I think definitely there will be charging stations along the important national highways in India. That is one of the positive things government is proposing. In addition to that, there are the fuel companies, petrol selling companies like Indian Oil or Bharat Petroleum are offering charging points in their pumps. It is not yet fully established, but they are coming forward and saying that, yeah, you can, like the way you fill the fuel in your car, we are going to set up a charging station for you. But this is contradictory because it is going to affect their business, but in any way they are offering. So this is all coming from the initiatives of the government. So at the end, the questions can still come, do we have a sufficient power to do that? I think the statistics are saying that India is poised to achieve the sufficiency of power by various means. And this is combined with, if you read both together, we can understand that in the coming years, we could achieve this infrastructure capability, at least in the near the big cities and along the highways, and also along the important state highways. That should ideally, drive this electrification forward. And then even now, majority of the car sales happen in urban India. And, if you go to the rural side, it is not comparatively high. But so going by that logic, so these initiatives from the government could, give confidence to an electric car owner and remove the range anxiety. And, that will help them to more people to venture into the field of electric vehicles in India. That's what we feel.
No, makes sense. And then actually, if you really look at, again, this is based on the data that 90% of the charging typically, people who are owning EVs, at least in the US, charging happens at your home. Only 10% when they are on a road trip or something that they are really using the infrastructure. So it's a combination of infrastructure as well as reliable power. I think that's going to be critical, in my opinion. If we can provide that, I think you will see a surge. And then more so because India imports a lot of oil today, and the gas prices in India are much, much higher compared to the other world, Western countries. So it makes a lot more sense. That kind of leads me to another interesting question. We talked about charging points. We talked about the price gap. When we talk about price gap and the indigenization of the parts, the big question is, what are Indian OEMs doing? How are they preparing to scale up their efforts towards electric vehicles? And if you're really seen in the Western countries, Volvo created Polestar, which is a completely independent entity to address electric vehicle market, because they wanted to have a completely outside-in thinking of how they want to build the vehicle, right? So they didn't want to combine different platforms, and we are seeing the trend in many OEMs. And some OEMs like VinFast, for example, from their Tata Motors of Vietnam, have pretty much gone the EV route right from day one. They ventured into the car segment with EV as the offering. So you're seeing all flavors of it globally. So just curious to know, what are the Tatas, Mahindras, and of course, Marutis are doing in India?
Yeah, I think that's also a very interesting point you raised. So in India, the talk about the electrification started almost, I can say, a couple of years back, and this become very prominent now. So if you look at the OEMs operating in India, we can, you know that it can be classified into generally three. One is the Indian OEMs, which is primarily consists of Tata and Mahindra. And then we have a Japanese OEMs like led by Maruti Suzuki, Honda, then Toyota, and Renault or Nissan specifically. Then comes the Western OEMs, which primarily consists of European and American. At the moment, we know that Ford and GM is decided to stop the business here. And leaving, we can say that Volkswagen and Stellantis, where we are not seeing much activities from them as far as we know in electrification at the moment. So, and also if you see the majority of the market is controlled by Japanese OEMs in India. So where they are also not very prominent or very strongly coming forward and announcing the projects are okay, we are going to do this, or this is the particular model, even though they have portfolios or the models available globally. But the main challenge again they are having is that, you know, bringing it into India, or how much it is going to cost. So, and in India, you know, the sensitivity to the price of the product, especially in automotive market, is very high. So how to rightly price? Something we need to engineer specifically for India. That could be the concern for the global OEMs. So basically, no much activity we can see. Looking at the Indian OEMs, that is what more interesting things happening there. You know, the Tata Motors is at the moment, if you look at the volume of sales, they are the #1 electric vehicle makers, and they sell more than anyone else in India. It's growing significantly. And they have many models and they have many platforms, right from the basic to the premium segment, and which is giving them a very, very top position in India at the moment as the primary OEM or the #1 in category segment. Mahindra is closely followed, but their products are yet to be launched. But there are a lot of products are in pipeline and the development and which will come forward. Then with the, outside all these, there is a segment which is totally indigenous and totally developed in India with our own technologies and basic things, mainly run by motorcycles or the two wheels. And also there are small vehicles which is used as a vegetable carts or garbage collection carts, and such kind of unorganized local or indigenous manufacturers, they are producing and selling it. Even most of the corporations or the big cities in India are started using electrified garbage collection carts. That is basically giving a feeling to the public that, okay, the electric vehicle is coming to your doorstep and picking up something. That gives the confidence, and people are curious to know how it is running and how it is getting charged, and people are getting used to that. Another big revolution happening here is the two-wheel side. There are many players producing electric two wheels in India. That is making short distance commuters very good advantage. They can use it, they can charge it. Many apartment societies are offering charging stations in the parking area, or you can run a charging line to your parking area. So many flexibility, so much support. And this is what is happening. So to make this short story, I can say that at the moment, from our experience, we are seeing a lot of activities from the Indian car makers, but we are not seeing much activity or the much projects from global one. So probably this is only a matter of time. As I said, their main concerns are many. One is the local parts availability. They need to bring the parts from outside their country or from the parent company, which will eventually cost more, and they will not be able to meet the final expected price by from an Indian consumer. That could be the one of the reasons. So we are seeing more activity in the indigenous segment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you really look at the electric vehicle, right, I think the big part of the cost, I presume, is going to be the battery. Significant, I would say.
Yeah.
And what we are also seeing that the OEMs are doing is very interesting models, revenue models, right? VinFast launched their EVs in the US, and they are leasing the battery, right? They are saying, okay, don't buy the car holistically. You're buying the car, but we'll lease the battery so that, there is a 10-year lease, 5-year lease, whatever that is, right? So there are very interesting models that are emerging. I'm not sure if you're seeing something like that in India, but I think the problem I see in India are more fundamental with respect to having the infrastructure to build the right components at the right price before even thinking about the revenue models and the prices, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, the replacement of a battery, which is having a limited life in an EV, is going to be the one of the big cost burden for the user, right? So this battery swap, as you said, is one of the important thing, and that will remove the fear in a consumer's mind that, okay, I need to shell out a huge amount of money, and that is definitely will be a concern. I think I think that, Prati, because since you are based out of Western markets for a long time, and you've seen the US and Europe markets quite well, and you understand that the sensitivity of this kind is probably non-existent over there, right? But in India, it happens the other way around, because when we buy an automobile, our concerns are the cost of maintenance, that how soon you need to replace the parts, how soon you need to put this or put that. That will basically, make people run away from buying a product if it is quite expensive to maintain. That's one of the concern here. As you rightly said, this battery swap method is one of the options. But again, it requires a lot of associated ecosystem. For example, we need to educate the users on how to handle the battery and how it can be changed, and recycling of end of life batteries, and so on and so forth. So this will be one of the big tasks, where we need to make the end user aware of the process of handling this. But as you indicated, this is one of the important step which we see going to happen in very soon, which will give more confidence to the user that they have an option in case they need a sudden battery replacement and or something like that.
No, in fact, you made an interesting. Sorry, some background. Sorry. Yeah. So you made an interesting point about return on investment, and I mean, it depends on the usage, of course, right? To what extent you're going to be using the car, driving the car. Personally, when I look at it, I've been looking for a car to upgrade my car, and I've been looking for a car for the last, I would say, 6 months. And as I had mentioned, being a techie, right, I get excited. Of course, electric is important. I like it, but I don't drive a lot. Being in a customer-facing role, I'm most of the time traveling. So I travel outside my hometown, so I don't really drive a lot. But for me, I think tech features are important. How easy is it to use the car and access the features? And car is nothing but a mobile phone on the wheels, and that's the way I see it. It's an extension of my phone when I go into the car. So that's an important topic and a different topic by itself. But that is important for me as a person. But it depends for every person. It's different. But that kind of brings to another topic, which is about innovation, right? If you really look at a company like Tesla that we all know, they're probably 3-4 years ahead of the game when it comes to the features and the remote over-the-air updates that they are able to provide to the software and other things that are able to seamlessly push into the car. I'm sure that other OEMs are going to get there, but they are currently having probably a 3-4 years leg up. But a lot of this innovation, if you really look at, because India is a software development hub, A lot of R&D happens. A lot of Western companies are having R&D hubs there. And personally, talking to a lot of people, I know that a lot of innovation is happening. Where do you see India with respect to the innovation journey, with respect to the Western OEMs as well as the Indian OEMs?
Yeah, yeah. I think India, as you said, we provide the software support and the engineering support to many large players in the market. I think since you yourself is aware that from this field and your vast experience in the Western world, and you might have seen many cases of companies operating their R&D support services out of India. So in a way, that way, we are providing our knowledge on the advanced technologies are very high, and many organizations. You take, for example, in the case of electrification, or in the case of autonomous driving, or the assisted driving, or the connected car. A lot of technologies are developed in India by their the research centers and provided and used in the other market. But in Indian perspective, the government is becoming more and more focused on providing safety to the occupants as well as the pedestrians. Typically speaking, we in India, what we do is that we see that everything will work. Okay, chalega, it will work. It will not have any problem. And since you are almost, I know that you are there more than a quarter of a century. You are living in West. You, from your eye, you see the safety is most important, right? Safety and human life. Even though we know that fact here, but we need to put extra effort here to people to be aware or follow the safety norms. This in mind, the government is strongly asking car makers to improve the safety of the cars. There are many ways. You know that way back in when we started getting the modern automobiles in end of 90s, there was no requirement of the seat belts. Then seat belts came in, and front alone, then rear, then airbags. Now the government is insisting that we should have airbags as a standard products, even in commercial vehicles, and there should be a pedestrian detection systems, reverse parking assistance, and also we are talking about the radars. This may not be a new thing for you, because probably you must be seeing this almost a decade apart, right? But in India, when we talk about, these are all new technologies coming in. And slowly, as you said, obviously, because the India major population is young, most predominantly techies, the car is slowly transforming into a kind of a moving mobile phone, or a something which you can able to use it as an entertainment center, or you can use it as a secondary workplace, or whatever it is. So the car is getting connected to the internet. Then will come how is the data security? So how this for that, Hitachi is having a solution, and we introduced a product in India way back, which is used by a couple of OEMs, and basically it acts as a gateway controller and a firewall to the external interferences. And also Hitachi is offering products like stereo cameras to our customers here, which basically detect or assist the detection of the obstacles or the potholes or the pedestrians. And more is going to come, like lane departure warning systems, which you are seeing it as a regular feature in West. So all these kind, or autonomous emergency braking in future. These are all primarily aimed to enhance the safety of the automobiles. And combined with this, now the regulations on the crash resistance also slowly change. This is the constant effort by the government and regulatory authorities to make sure that the automobiles used in India are safe, secure, not only to the occupants, but also to the pedestrians. This combined with the pressure on electrification, we feel that, transform Indian automotive industry in a significantly way forward, and we will be seeing it. But all these come as so the flip side of this development is that, the cost of the end product, like an automobile, will definitely need to go up. So that is the challenge many OEMs are facing. So whether Indian customers are willing to pay something extra for added features, technologies, and the safety, that is a big question everyone is staring at.
Okay, great. Manoj, I think we are getting a lot of great questions. Given that we have another 10 minutes, I'm going to quickly switch to the questions that are coming in live here.
Yeah.
There are interesting ones, right? I'm going to pick one from the bottom that I just received. How would the EV future affect IC engine and engineers linked with the automotive industry? Somebody is really concerned about what's going to be my future.
That's a very, very interesting question. And even, when I take my car to the service, this is what many of my servicemen ask me, sir, what is going to be the future of me? Because, like engineers, the mechanics and various service centers also getting affected. I think, definitely when EV 100% replace ICE engine, all these need to change. So our question is that when it is going to happen? That is the $1 million question. And according to our estimate, in India, the EV and ICE engines may coexist maybe another couple of decades. But with that, there is no one is going to lose opportunity or job, at least for a reasonable amount of time. But about the new developments happening in the ICE engines, that is going to be the big. It is not something new, I am saying. Many large OEMs already announced stopping of ICE engines. No one is developing anything at the moment. Most, if you take, I don't want to name anyone because all of our it is available in media that you can see that the many prominent OEMs already decided that they will not do anything. Developing an ICE engine requires a significant investment. So EV in the future, when EV 100% replace ICE engine, then what has happened in before, many things are become obsolete. You take best example is the film cameras. So now with the advent of digital cameras, the films become, many companies who manufacture the photo films shut down. Processing studios you cannot see. And probably, Ramki, you can recollect when our younger days, we can see a lot of studios offering the printouts. When you take a photo, you need to give it to the studio and you need to wait for maybe 2 weeks to get the print right. It's a pretty anxious time waiting for the photos to see. Now you can see it you can take the picture, you can edit it. Next second you can see it in an electronic screen or you can print it out. That is a change. So change will happen. So another example is, where the digital watch and mechanical watches. So when the digital watch came in, one chip could replace maybe 1,000 small mechanical components in a watch. So many industries closed. So this transformation is inevitable. So in long run, when EV become totally replace ICE engines, that this kind of a change will happen. But when it will happen, and it is not going to happen today, tomorrow, or maybe in another 10 years or 20 years, that is what the one assurance we can give.
No, that's a good career advice and guidance for this gentleman who had asked this question, or the lady, I'm not sure, but no, thank you. Thanks for that insight. Another interesting question is it possible to run on both fuel and electricity by simply switching the power source? He's probably talking about, he or she is talking about hybrid models here, right?
Okay.
And you touched upon this, saying that unlike the Western world, which had kind of gone from ICE to hybrid to electric, India is probably jumping directly from say ICE to electric. So can you tell a little bit more about why India is not adopted hybrid? Because that range anxiety that you talked about is something that can be addressed with a hybrid. At the same time, you get more fuel efficiency.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So the honestly speaking, we don't know the reason behind exactly, but what we can assume is that, even in hybrid vehicles, fossil fuels are used. That when you drive beyond certain distance, hybrid, you cannot drive indefinitely on electric power. Yeah, so you need to, if it is a plug-in hybrid, you can plug the battery and you can charge it, you can drive it. And when it's run out, you can probably run little on internal combustion engine combined together. But eventually you need a fuel. So probably one intention behind moving from internal combustion to electric directly is that eliminate the dependency on this fuel and control the emission. That could be the one of the reasons. And moreover, if you see in India, we changed from the BS4, Bharat Stage 4 emissions, to straight to BS6. There is no BS5 in between. It is just like changing from Euro 4 to Euro 6. It's a big change. And it happened. There is a lot of resistance and lot of modifications required from in the engine side. If you shift from BS4 to BS6, you need to change throttle mechanism. You cannot use mechanical throttle at all. You need to have electronic controlled throttle body, and you need to change the ECU program as well as sometimes hardware. And fuel injection system need to be modified, and catalytic converter or the emission control system need to be changed. A lot of modification of the engine side was required, but even then the government was very firm in that achieving the BS6 without going through the BS5 regulation. So that could be the one reason that, straight to the goal. That could be the reason that the government is pushing. EV is the end, and the maximum the possible we can able to achieve that. So that could be the one reason they are pushing it directly to EV without going to the hybrid system. So this question is related to the hybrid. Basically, in the case of a hybrid, it is possible. Hybrid cars use, or any automobile for that matter, use a small internal combustion engine and a bigger battery and motor and control system. So in some emergency situations, you can increase the range by switching over and toggling between hybrid mode and electric and combined together. So this is not possible in the case of an EV, and where you have to run until your battery lasts. That is what it is.
Okay, great. I probably will take one last question. I think we are very close to the time here, but the other interesting question is about hydrogen vehicles, right? Hydrogen vehicle versus EV, and what is your point of view on that? Because we have not seen much of hydrogen vehicles even in the western side of the world, but I know that the infrastructure minister, transportation minister Nitin Gadkari was talking about this a lot, and also he was talking about fossil fuels. So any point of view on that?
Yeah, it's a next level after EV, the battery driven energy storage. And so the main challenge is the stations where you can able to fill the hydrogen and the storage. This is one of the main concern. And second is the development of the engine or the power source. And you know that in Germany, this concept was under study many years back, but even now, it is not fully industrialized. Same in US as well. So many of the developed markets are doing it. There are several challenges, a serious engineering challenges in the dispensing the hydrogen gas into an automobile and storing it, and also the achieving the necessary performance in it. But even that, there are many organizations in India, the big industrial houses are taking this as one of the next level of challenge. and getting into the EV, sorry, the fuel cell vehicle, we call it as, so in employing hydrogen as a fuel. So it may not be something, even though the government is asking people to do it, but that will be the next technology after we achieve the EV penetration, the significantly high level in India.
Got it. So Manoj, there are a lot of questions and there are still a lot of topics, right? As I said, each one of this probably takes at least a day to discuss and get to some kind of an understanding for all the viewers, but we had only 45 minutes, and whatever that we could. But we'll try and answer the questions that has come offline. Whoever has asked those questions, relevant questions, we'll try and answer that. But thank you so much. I think if I need to really summarize this, it was very insightful. I learned a lot, but the big question that probably no one has an answer is, when will, is India ready? Of course, India is getting ready, but when will India adopt to EV as a primary mode of, vehicle is something that I think only time will tell. My guess is somewhere in the next 10 to 20 years, because I think we are seeing a very fast adoption of EVs in the Western world. About 10% of the vehicles that were sold in the last 12 months were electric vehicles. And there are about 450 EVs were launched, in the last 6 months. All kinds of vehicles, I'm saying. It's not just about cars alone. So we are seeing the huge adoption, and I'm sure that, like any other technology, we had 3G, 4G, LTE, 5G. India adopted after probably 4 or 5 years' time. We're going to see that. But I think the discussion and the points that you made were very insightful. I learned a lot. I hope the audience also learned a lot from this. Thank you so much, Manoj, for taking your time. And we'll try and answer the questions offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramki. Thank you. It was nice speaking with you as well, with your global exposure and experience. I think you have a rich experience in software as well as other areas in the Western market where all these technologies are many years started. So it was a big learning and nice session to talk to you as well. Thank you for your opportunity.
Thank you, Manoj. Thanks.
Thank you.